Frances went up, knelt, Queen did her bit, and talked to him for a little while. More than she usually did. Whether she'd been primed to, whether she was an admirer of his work, doesn't really matter. She did talk to him, and he spoke back, and finally got up and walked backwards and back to his seat while the band played, a spoonful of sugar and those other sort of strange things that they play at these events. And the Bradford MBE figure, he knelt down and he got his medal pinned to him, and it just so, she didn't really say much, she just said, well done, or something. And it just by some awful, embarrassing bad luck, he happened to let rip with a mighty fart at exactly this moment. And it was the moment the Queen steps back, which she'd done. And it made it look as if she had stepped back because he'd let one go, as it were. So he walked backwards and then turned around, blushing furiously. And then, to make his day worse, at the end of it, when the press gather round and everyone's in their shiny top hats and everything, obviously a huge crowd of press descended on Francis Bacon, and one member of the Bradford Inquirer, or whatever it might be, was sort of asking questions of this forlorn fellow. And Francis, who didn't particularly like talking to the press, and said, oh, well, there was nothing very interesting, but that man was interesting. He virtually farted in the Queen's face. And the press just chased it. He said, the last I saw of him, his hat was bouncing on the cobbles and he was running round the corner. I just thought it was the most wonderful story. Anyway.
Lambeth Walk.
Oh my, there's a thing. Yes. Well, you're seeking to elicit, I must assume.
I'm seeking to elicit.
The story of, in 1984-ish, my agent, who was a man called Richard Armitage, who had come to Cambridge when I was there with Hugh Laurie and Emma Thompson and Tony Slattery. We were on the Footlights, and he sort of scooped us up in his JCB, and we all became his clients. And he was a marvellous man. He had an old Etonian tie and a Bentley and cigars, very old-fashioned and very delightful. One weekend, he invited me to his house in the country, which was called Stebbing, in Essex, in that nice part of Essex around about Dunmow. It's a very much underrated part of an underrated county. And he started talking to me about himself, which he never did. He was a very old-fashioned, sort of rather growly Englishman. And he said, my father was called Reginald Armitage. I said, and my grandparents made their money making pomfret cakes in South Yorkshire. So that's like Pontefract, but yes, pronounced pomfret, right? Okay, pomfret cakes. But my father, Reginald, was very musically gifted. He went to Cambridge, and then he went to the Royal College of Music, and then he was appointed organist at St Anne's, Soho, right? And he heard a lot of modern music being played in his day, jazz music, and he turned out to have rather a facility for composing tunes. I said, well, gosh, that's interesting. He said, yes. But he thought that it was rather embarrassing to the family name to use his own, so he invented a pseudonym under which he could compose, which was Noel Gay. I said, right. And so she said, I know it's an odd name now, but in the time, it was very 30s, it's sunbursts and Noel Gay. And under that name, he was a very successful composer, and he wrote many songs. The Sun Has Got His Hat On, Hey Little Hen, Let's Have a Tiddly at the Milk Bar, The Lambeth Walk, Leaning on a Lamppost, and so on. I said, gosh, that's a great litany of 30s English songs. He said, yes, and many of these were written into a musical called Me and My Girl. I said, wow. Anyway, so gosh, it's getting late. I'll probably go to bed. He said, so here it is. And he pulled out this strange fool's cap. For those of you who are too young to know what fool's cap is, it was like what the standard paper size before the European A4 arrived, a little bit taller and thinner. I guess you could put it into a dunce's shape, which is why it was called that. But anyway, I don't know, why else would it be called fool's cap? I don't know. He gave me this typescript. It was an old typescript, where there were sort of orange rust marks where the punch holes had, gone. And so he said, I'd like you to read it. So it was the show, Me and My Girl. So I read it. He said, and the next morning he said, what did you think? I said, well, it's very interesting.